So with the short block complete, it's time for me to turn my attention to the top end of the engine. And for this first step, I've got everything laid out on my clean tray. I've got a new set of JES pistons, and these are 81 millimeters, and they run at a compression ratio of 9.5 to 1. I was thinking about getting a higher compression ratio, maybe even 10.5 to 1, but then I can only get 91 octane gas in this area, so I would actually have to run with a higher octane. And I just want to build a nice, streetable, reliable engine. So it felt like 9.5 was in the zone for me with that octane level. So that's what I went with. They came with their own piston rings, of course, wrist pins and circlips. I also had the cylinders bored to 81 millimeters to match the pistons. The heads have been gone through by Ted Robinson, and he found the valve guides to be completely worn. Worst he'd ever seen. Amazed the car even ran. It was all quite funny. So these have been all gone through, and that was the cause of the blue smoke, of course. So he went through all of these, cleaned up all the valves and new valves guides and all of that kind of stuff, and they look brand new. I've got a new set of head gaskets and barrel gaskets, and then some barrel shims also. These are 1 millimeter shims. So what we'll do first is we're going to measure the piston ring gap. I'll take the piston rings and I'll just install them in the cylinders and measure the gap to make sure they're in tolerance. So I've got a light coat of oil on the inside of my cylinder, and I'm going to take my first piston ring with the dot facing up. It would have a mark. It would either say top or have a mark, and mine has a little dimple which is going to face up. And I'm just going to squeeze this ring together and put it into the cylinder and rotate it down. I don't want to scratch the inside of my cylinder if I can. And now I want to get this level inside of the cylinder itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piston ring and install it on my piston, as I have here. And then I can just take the piston and push it down on top of that piston ring, and I can feel it move down inside the cylinder, and the piston ring will come in contact with the top of the skirt of the cylinder, and it'll stop right there. And I know that now that piston ring is even in the bore right there. So I can go ahead now and measure that gap. So currently we have a ring gap of 8 thousandths. So I need to go and work out what the actual ring gap should be for these pistons. So my pistons came with this ring end gap table, and it shows you different applications. I'm just going to go with the first one, the street strip. And it's saying that the top ring, the measurement we're looking for is the bore of the cylinder times this 0.0045 inches. The second one is the bore times 0.005 inches. And then there's a minimum on the actual oil ring as well, the rails for the oil ring. So Google tells me that 81 millimeters is actually 3.189 inches. And I times that by the 0.0045 equals 14 thousandths is what I'm looking for on the first ring, the top ring. So I'll make a note of that, 14 thousandths. On the second ring, I'm looking at 3.189 times 0.005 equals, now let's round that up to 16 thousandths. So the first one is 14 thousandths, and the second ring is 16 thousandths. I ordered a piston ring filer from Amazon, and it's a little machine with a sanding disc and a little hand crank. And all I do is basically put the ring up against these guides here, with the one side facing touching the wheel, and then we'll go ahead and give it a little crank. It makes a nice square cut on the edge of the ring. So I'm going to keep on filing both sides a little bit at a time and keep on trying it back in the cylinder until I get that 14 thousandths measurement I'm looking for. Yep. Oh, it's tiniest bit of drag on it. So I'm going to say that is good to go. So this ring is gapped at 14 thousandths. So these are the oil ring guides, and they go either side of the actual oil ring itself, a little sandwich like this. And I've measured the gap on these, and they are within the spec of 15 thousandths. So the first piece to install is the center piece, and that goes in the bottom groove here, the largest groove. I'm just going to bend it over here, and it goes in really easily. Now this is the top of the piston with the biggest recess. And what I want to do is put the top rail at the 2 o'clock position and the bottom rail at the 10 o'clock position, the gap. So I'll go ahead and install the top rail first, and this got to be super careful. This is really, really fragile. That's it. Perfect. It's over the bottom of the piston in the 10 o'clock position. So if we look here, this ring is at the 10 o'clock position here, and then the top ring is at the 2 o'clock. It's about 1 o'clock, so I'll move it around a little bit. There it is, 2 o'clock. So that is that oil ring in there. Beautiful. Okay, this is the second piston ring, and it's been gapped to 16 thousandths. And I'm just going to spread it over the top of the piston. Get my fingers either side of it. And go for that second gap, which is perfect. So this is the top ring, and it's been gapped to 14 thousandths, and it has the dot facing up. So I'm just going to go ahead and spread the ring, put the back in the groove and pop it down. And there it is in its groove. Okay, I'm just going to install this piston. I'm just making sure that the gaps are correct. Top ring's in the 3, second ring's in the 9 o'clock position. And the oil ring is with the gaps at 10 and 2, if you look at the top of the piston. This is the bottom of the piston, this is the top. So I want to put it in like this, and this has a direction too. It will tell me on it where the bottom, this is the bottom. Okay, so not moving any of my rings. Perfect. Let's go ahead and center it over there you go, center it over there. Boom. And I'm just going to do this by hand for the now I'm going to use the pliers to get the oil ring. Seems to be the one that's hard to get in. The others seem to be fine. I think that's gone in. Release it, and there it is. Perfect. Just make sure I can feel it. If it's good or not. Yeah, that's good. So I have my pistons and cylinders all ready to go with the rings installed. So with cylinders 1 and 4, I'm going to use the 1mm shim on the bottom of the cylinder to measure the deck height. I'll start there so I don't have too little space, and then I'll adjust once I know that distance from the piston to the head. I'm going to take my shim, I'm going to take my piston and cylinder. There you go. Can feel the wrist pin going into the rod. It's pretty even in there, the wrist pin now. So I have these cylinder holding nuts, which I'll put on. And basically that'll keep the cylinder from sliding off as we put number 4 on. Don't want to pinch that gasket. A head gasket, and be very careful not to tear it on the studs. There you go. Okay, I'm going to stick some modeling clay on the piston. Maybe just do a line across the top. I think I definitely want to do the sides. What do you think? I don't know. Let's try that. Just going to back the engine down from top dead center with some fettling. Look at that. Alright, let's torque these down to 23.5. I'm just going to walk up on that a bit. Perfect. Alright, with 1 and 4 in place, let's go ahead and crank the engine over clockwise, just really lightly. Make sure I come up past top dead center. I felt that go. Let's go around again. see where we landed. Okay, this is exciting. Never been so excited to see modeling clay crushed in my life. Or not crushed. Not crushed. Look at that. Oh, the sides got crushed. Of course. That's in fact, that's probably what we're looking for. The sides to get crushed. Oh, that's a perfect example of this one in the corner. I'm going to call that 2.2. My 1mm base gasket is just too much. I want this range to be about 1.25 to 1.5 millimeters, and it's right now it's at 2.2. So I think if I just put the regular base gasket, which is 0.25 millimeters, it's going to get me where I want to be. Okay, let's say I'm at 2.2 millimeters, and the base gasket is 1 millimeter, so that's minus 1 equals 1.2 plus the regular base gasket, which is 0.25, equals 1.45 millimeters. So that's going to get me right in the zone if I put the regular base gasket on here, hopefully. Let's try that and measure it all again. Alright, let's swap out this base gasket, this 1 millimeter, for the 0.25, and then we'll reassemble everything. Alright, I've positioned them in these four corners on the edge. Okay, let's turn the engine over a couple of times and crush that modeling clay. I can feel it. Resistance there. Ugh. Okay, feels pretty good. Alright, let's disassemble everything. Okay, let's remove this head. Oh, look at that. So I'm going to set my caliper to the minimum distance, which is 1.25. Well, let's see if the bottom of the caliper leaves an imprint in the clay. I'm going to put the end piece on the piston and then the flat piece on the clay and see if it leaves a mark. Which it does. So let's set it to 1.5, which is the biggest gap I want, and lock it off. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to find a clean piece of clay and I'm going to pop this next to it and press hard. I'm not touching the clay. I'm not leaving any marks in the clay. I can see that I'm not. So I know it's in between those distances, 1.25 and 1.5 millimeters. No mark. Alright, I feel good about that. I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to install the circlips inside the pistons, and I'm going to do the right hand side only on all the pistons, and then I can slide the wrist pin through the rod, hit the circlip on the right, and then I'll install the circlip on the left while it's on the engine. I have got the Stomsky Racing circlip injection tool. And what you do with this basically is you compress the circlip inside this sleeve, then you place the sleeve inside the recess here where the wrist pin goes, and then you take the plunger and you push it and it pops the circlip into the groove. That's the idea anyway, so let's see how it works. Circlip into plunger, not too far, just give it enough to get in there. There we go, perfect. Plunger in, push and pull at the same time. Bang. And that looks like it's seated in there, right? I'm going to take a little look, and yeah, that's perfect, right in there, right in the groove. Excellent. Okay, moving on, I'm going to do all 6. So I've got the engine covered in cling wrap so that any wayward circlips don't go flying down into the engine case, and I'm just going to put a bit of assembly lube on the inside of the rod channels here. Okay, I've got number 1 here with its piston installed, the wrist pin just hanging out, the circlip on the right hand side, and the base gasket, the 0.25 millimeter base gasket with a light coat of, I'm going to use this curl tee. Alright, I'm just going to use a long socket and my mallet and very lightly tap it. There it is, very lightly. So I have my wrist pin inside the sleeve of the tool. You're kidding. Really? That went in? Without any drama from your mama? That's unbelievable. It's in. Great. First one done. And pull and push at the same time. Nope, that didn't go in. Phew, thank goodness for the film. All right, let's set it up and try it again. Yep, it's in there, right? Done. God, that tool's great. That's it. Let's give it a tap. So I've gone ahead and installed the air deflectors, these little pieces of tin around the cylinder, and that helps sort of direct the airflow around the cylinders. And you can make this little modification which is laid out in Wayne's book, and it's cutting these little 1-inch notches in certain deflectors around the cylinders so that it gets better airflow. And by doing this little modification you can save about 10 or 15 degrees Fahrenheit on the engine temperature. I'm going to go ahead and clean the cylinders and the tops of the pistons, ready for the heads. I want to make sure everything's nice and clean. There we are, they're all torqued down. Just checking the height to make sure everything's good. That's good. Well, it's beginning to look more like an engine now with the cylinders and the heads on. I just want to give it a turn to make sure there's no binding. I don't feel any resistance in there at all. Of course the engine's cold. Again, I feel pretty good about that. No more parts, we have a clean tray.